Camp season is in full swing with Under Armour next in Dallas and Battle 7-on-7 New Orleans. Our Mike Roach and Tom Lloyd join us from the scene with updates on the top prospects. And are you a prospect who wants to earn more stars or a fan who's curious about the rating process? Our Smoke Dixon and Cooper Petagna share how they project talent in Free Game Monday. All this and more on the College Football Recruiting Show starting right now. Welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. I'm Grace Remington with Blair Angula. We are bringing you the latest from the recruiting trail. But before we begin, you already know what to do. Please like this video, subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel so you never miss an update. Turn on those notifications. All right, let's get into today's top headlines. Blair, starting with receiver Derek Smith has committed to Alabama. He chooses the Crimson Tide over an offer list that includes Auburn, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, LSU, Miami, Ole Miss, and Texas, among others. Blair, what are the Tide getting with the in-state product?
One of the best players in America, a top 10 wide receiver in this 2025 class. We know our scouting team loves the multi-sport profile on Derek, who also plays baseball and basketball. He averaged over 32 yards per reception last season, 16 yards per carry, absolutely crazy production, and he'll bring that with him to Tuscaloosa.
Four-star safety Tay Harris has received a crystal ball to Clemson from both our Steve Wiltfong and Anna Adams. Harris received a Clemson offer in January, just days after he withdrew his pledge from Georgia. Blair, why could Harris be a better fit at Clemson?
Two words, Grace: depth chart. We're not sleeping on the talent at Clemson, but the pathway to early snaps is a bit more crowded at Georgia. Harris could be a day one impact safety, and I think he sees that. He just debuted in the top 24/7 last week, and his stock continues to trend upward.
The top player in the Sunshine State, DJ Pickett, made a return visit to LSU this past weekend. The five-star cornerback and two-way player is also looking at Georgia, Miami, Oregon, Florida, and Florida State. But he said the recent visit to Baton Rouge felt like home. Blair, what would his addition do for LSU's 2025 class?
It would be a massive pickup for Brian Kelly and his staff. LSU already has two top 10 players committed in QB1 Bryce Underwood and wide receiver number 1 DeCorian Moore. They've got the top 3 players in the state of Louisiana committed. LSU didn't sign a top 40 player in the state of Florida last cycle. So what a turnaround this would be if they got it done with DJ Pickett.
The LSU class currently ranks second. To the 2026 class now, four-star quarterback Faison Brandon visited Florida State over the weekend and had positive things to say. He had already been planning on visiting 4 SEC schools this spring and is now adding NC State and Penn State to his visit list. Blair, where do you think might be a good fit?
17 schools have already offered, including a handful in the SEC. I'd venture to say any of them would be a great fit, but out of the schools we just mentioned, how about Florida State? Faison has an easy delivery, tremendous mechanics. I love what he's able to do downfield, and if it gets you wondering when you see his film what a coach like Mike Norvell could do with him in a few years.
And camp season is in full swing with two of the biggest events happening over the weekend in Dallas and New Orleans. With the amount of talent in these two states, these camps are some of the most loaded in spring. And our experts are there sizing these players up live, and they now join us with the latest recruiting intel from the scene.
Thanks, Grace. This was another terrific battle event that was loaded with talent. Great two-day event, Saturday and Sunday. In the end, DEF CON Texas defeated Raw. It was a really good game to finish things out, but DEF CON Texas was led by really 4 guys, in my opinion. Class of 2026 top 100 wide receiver DB Keyshawn Henderson. Played all over the place, but for me, and he made plays, but for me, absolutely love this kid at safety. Super long, rangy, tremendous upside there, and I'll tell him that as much to his face every time I see him. But class of 2025, 3-star wide receiver and defensive back and running back, Royal Capel, versatile, got open with ease. He was a great playmaker for them. Class of 2025, 3-star wide receiver Jalen Cooper was a big play threat downfield. And then really the guy getting them the football, class of 2025 quarterback Chad Warner, super consistent, all 2 days and really led them to victory, and he was key for them. A couple other shout outs. Raw was outstanding all weekend long. Like I said, they just fell short. Class of 2025 top 247 quarterback and TCU commit Ty Hawkins was our alpha dog for 24/7 Sports. Strong arm, accurate, layered it extremely well. Stock up for the kid. He threw the ball really, really well. Class of 2025 top 247 wide receiver Cortez Mills was a big time performer. He had the catch of the day, was consistent for really the 2 days, got hurt late, which really hurt them in the title game. He was hurt right before it. So that was a tough one. Class of 2025, top 247 wide receiver, Donovan Olubade. Hope I nailed that last name. He was consistent, deep ball threat, very, very fun to watch. Really like what he brings to the table. And then lastly, a guy that I had not seen before, class of 2026, cornerback Dominic Kelly has a chance to be special, man. He was so fun to watch. He's on his way to being elite. A couple other shout outs. I want to give a shout out to South Florida Express. They were terrific, especially the first night. Class of 2025, top 247 wide receiver, Vernell Brown III was a touchdown machine, a absolute playmaker, dominant, also made plays as a defensive back. You have 3-star Florida State commit, Tramel Jones Jr. at quarterback, another class of 2025 prospect, consistent, big, live arm, best I've seen him to date. 4-star wide receiver, Jamie French, a composite 5-star class of 2025 playmaker, so smooth, made everything look very effortless. You also had LSU top 247 cornerback commit Jabari Antoine. He is the definition of lockdown and shutdown. He was rarely challenged, and it was simply because he was that good in the secondary. And then lastly, a guy that came out of nowhere for me was 3-star defensive back out of the class of 2025, Courtney Patterson from Florida. Big time, pleasant surprise. He probably led the entire tournament in interceptions. Every time I looked, he had the ball in his hands. For Boom Football, they had a great 2 days. This kid, Jonas Williams at quarterback, class of 2026, this kid has incredible traits. Very, very excited to watch where his recruitment progresses. He made some incredible throws for the 2 days. And then lastly, class of 2025, 4-star wide receiver Talon Taylor, coveted by a bunch of schools across the country. Better than expected, very smooth, very athletic, caught the ball really well, high points to football. You see why so many schools are coming after him. But look for a ton of coverage at 24/7 Sports from Battle New Orleans, from myself, from Mike Roach. But let's kick it over to Mike Roach, who was over at Under Armour Dallas, and he has a ton of coverage for you guys. Thanks, Grace. This was another terrific battle.
Dallas took place this weekend. My biggest Victoria, number one wide receiver in the country out of Duncanville, fresh off the visit, and he spoke highly of his return to Baton Rouge. After the tournament, talked for some these schools at the moment. It's Texas, it's LSU, it's Oregon, and Ohio State. Those are the schools that, even though he's committed, he's still talking with those other schools, but he's kind of shut everybody out of the process. I think a lot of the talk in this recruitment has been which school is going to flip him. But I think that's a little bit premature. I think he committed to LSU for a reason. The trip back to Baton Rouge really strengthened his commitment. And, we'll see where it goes from here. But I think that LSU still has the upper hand in this recruitment, holding the commitment. It's easy to see why, he's such a big play threat. It's easy to see why everybody's after him. Texas and the return of Chris Gilbert as special assistant to the head coach, he was really key in establishing the original relationship between the Longhorns and DeCorian Moore. Oregon has done a phenomenal job building the relationship, not only with DeCorian, but with his mother and his entire family. I think they've done the best job on that front. And then Ohio State, they have a lot of things in their favor, especially with Brian Hartline, the history of wide receiver production within the program, and the fact that Devin Sanchez, a good friend of DeCorian Moore, the number one corner in the country, is committed there and is recruiting him there. Elsewhere, we also got to see the vaunted Dallas-Fort Worth offensive tackle trio of big top 247 offensive tackles from the Dallas area. Michael Fassi from Louisville High School, Ty Haywood from Denton Ryan, and Lamont Rogers from Mesquite Horn. All three of those guys took part in the camp. All three had some really shining moments. And all three of those guys are kind of intertwined when you start looking at the schools that are recruiting them. Texas, Oklahoma, A&M, Missouri. Those are 4 schools that are commonly mentioned for all 3 of those prospects. And we're getting a little clearer view of kind of where some of those guys are leaning, but I still think it's wide open for all 3 of them. And we're going to get more clarity when they start going on these official visits in the summer. I think Texas is in a good spot for Fasusi, but I wouldn't count out Missouri there. I like Oklahoma at the moment for Ty Haywood, but I think Alabama could make a big push there. And I like where Texas A&M and Oklahoma stand for Lamont Rogers. So I think it's going to be, a really interesting recruitment as we watch those 3 elite tackles kind of go through and see where they'll end up. The next guy we were really impressed with was Michael Turner, a top 247 running back out of Richland, Texas. The top running back in the state of Texas. He had a phenomenal day running routes in a portion of the camp that's really hard to stand out in. Right now, at this point, SMU, Oklahoma State, Arizona State, and Florida are 4 of the schools standing out for him. USC could jump into the picture. USC just hired TCU running back coach Anthony Johnson. Once he's moved over there, if USC decides to get in, that's a guy that had a relationship with Turner prior when he was at TCU. I could see them becoming a factor. One interesting thing of note here is SMU, I think, is the in-state school best position for Michael Turner. But there was some talk about him wanting to get outside of state borders and probably attend school out of state. So obviously, if you're Oklahoma State, if you're Arizona, if you're Florida, or if you're USC, as we talked about, that kind of bodes well for you. And I also think that we could see more schools jump in on him during the spring evaluation period. He almost rushed for 1,700 yards last season. It was a really, really big play threat and one of the top running backs in the country overall. One of the top overall risers this spring has been North Crowley offensive lineman Henry Fanuku. Fanuku, who moved to the United States from Ghana just a few years ago and only started playing football 2 years ago, has been on a tear lately, picking up offers from schools like Texas A&M, USC, Georgia. And while those big names might impress a lot of other prospects, Fanuku was clear that his biggest priority is relationships, and the schools that have been in it the longest for him have the best relationships with him at this point. Doesn't mean that can't change going forward, but it's a big reason why SMU, Ole Miss, and Texas Tech are still kind of setting the pace in this recruitment. I really like the growth he's shown over the last few years. Again, extremely new to the game, played soccer before this, but when you look at his size and his movement ability, it's easy to see why schools are starting to come around now that they're seeing him during the evaluation period. Fanuku is going to have a round of visits this spring. He's going to try to see as many schools as possible, and we'll see if anything changes there. But right now, it is the trio, Ole Miss, SMU, and Texas Tech, that are kind of sitting out on top for him. And then finally, the top passer in the state of Texas, Keelan Russell, who just made a big jump into the top 247 from Duncanville High School. DeCorian Moore's quarterback had a monster day at Under Armour Dallas. He was named our alpha dog by our scouting team, Gabe Brooks and Hudson Standish, and really stood out above the crowd when you watched him throw the ball in consistent settings. An SMU commit, Keelan Russell, is going to be a guy that they're going to have to really fight for. There's some SEC schools, Florida, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss involved for him. UCLA is getting into the picture. Texas has even been in contact. This is going to be a battle for SMU to keep him at home. And because this is a quarterback that is kind of a game changer for a program like that moving into the ACC. We'll see kind of how things go as he makes these visits during the spring and during the summer. But I think it's going to get really interesting. I think this is going to be the most intriguing recruitment to watch in the Lone Star State. And it's easy to see why teams love him so much. He's led Duncanville to 2 straight state championships. He's gone from a complete unknown to completely undeniable in the span of 2 years. For more on Midwest recruiting, we're going to go to Allen Trieu.
Thanks, Mike. And Tom, you heard Tom Loy mention wide receiver Talon Taylor, a 4-star prospect who certainly made some noise down at Battle in New Orleans over the weekend. Talon has told us that he is now set 4 spring unofficial visits. He's going to start off at Georgia on March 23rd, get to Ohio State on March 30th, and then visit Notre Dame and Michigan early in April. Right now, those are 4 of the top schools in his recruitment. He's going to take a look at maybe getting to some other schools like Ole Miss and UCLA, but I like where Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Michigan stand. Obviously, 3 of those schools are in the Midwest. Georgia is not, but he had a really, really good visit with the Bulldogs in the winter. This is going to be an important visit for Georgia because since that visit, wide receivers coach Brian McClendon, who Talon was very, very close to, has gone to the NFL. So he's going to have a chance to go down there, revisit with the staff, and then also meet new wide receivers coach James Coley. So that's going to be huge for the Bulldogs' chances. At Ohio State, he has a great relationship with wide receivers coach Brian Hartline, and their history of development is big for him. He told me that was one of the main criteria in his recruitment. He wanted coaching stability and to be developed for the next level. The Buckeyes offer that. Notre Dame and Michigan also offer that. He's close with Mike Brown, wide receivers coach at Notre Dame, and Ron Bellamy, wide receivers coach at Michigan. So I think those are the 4 schools right now that have the best chance at him. He has not set any official visits. He may do so after taking these spring officials and look to work towards a summer decision. He definitely wants to be committed before his senior year. Moving to another 4-star wide receiver and a guy who is new to the 4-star ranks, that's John Anthony Hall out of the state of Indiana, who climbed into the top 247 in the most recent update. Just an outstanding athlete from Fishers, Indiana. He just set up an official visit with Indiana. That is to go along with an official visit he already set up with Purdue. So the 2 in-state schools are battling for him, and we're seeing new Hoosiers coach Kurt Signetti and Boilers head coach Ryan Walters run into each other a lot more on the trail so far in this 2025 cycle. The Boilers won a battle this morning for in-state defensive lineman Landon Brooks, who had official visits set with both schools but committed to the Boilers before ever taking that official to Bloomington. I don't think that's going to happen with John Anthony Hall. I do believe he's going to take both of these officials. I do think there's some other schools in the mix to earn an official visit from him, but right now it looks like a Hoosier Boiler in-state battle for one of the newest 4-star prospects in the top 247. And then finally, Nebraska is going to get an official visit June 21st weekend from in-state linebacker, defensive athlete Pierce Mooberry. He's a Husker legacy, but he said that he's going to give other schools a chance. You see him here playing safety, but with his size, he's going to likely move into the box at the next level. That's where schools are recruiting him. He's also going to take a spring visit to Nebraska. So the Huskers are going to get him on campus 2 times in the next few months. He is going to do what he said and give some other schools an opportunity. He's going to visit Minnesota. They were one of the first schools to offer him. He's also going to get to Kansas State, another school who has offered him. And then he's going to get down to Tuscaloosa and visit with the new Bama staff. Alabama has not offered him yet, but they have been in contact, and Kalen DeBoer and his coaches have been wanting to get him on campus now and build a relationship with him. So even though the crystal ball says Nebraska, and I'm leaning towards joining on that crystal ball, Pierce Mooberry definitely giving some of these other schools a look. And when Bama's lurking, you certainly can't count them out in this recruitment. So that's it from the Midwest.
Biz right there. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. And for more recruiting insight that you cannot find anywhere else, be sure to visit 247sports.com and subscribe. If you sign up now, you will get a deal. You can get 50% off the annual VIP membership. It is well worth it for all the exclusive info and analysis you receive. But that ends tomorrow, so you got to sign up today. It's 247sports.com. All right, the top 24/7 was updated last week. The new look list includes 24 newcomers, including 10 new 5-stars. So let's take a look at some of those top prospects for 2025. Good mix of positions there. You have 3 offensive tackles, 3 cornerbacks, 3 quarterbacks. Bryce Underwood leads the list. No surprise there. And then Julian Lewis, number 16, after reclassifying in January. But there's still some guys in the mix to move up. Obviously, you got to finish with 32 5-stars by the end of the cycle. So it's time for Free Game Monday. Smoke Dixon, Cooper Petagna join us now. Coop, I will start with you, and we'll start with the beginning. How do high school players earn their first star ranking?
That's a loaded question, and a question we get a lot with the scouting team at 24/7 Sports. But I will say it's not one size fits all type of answer there. I think for us, it's a height, weight, speed game. We talk about that a lot. We're going to talk about that a lot today. And what I mean by that is you have to have the redeeming qualities and the traits to place on Saturday and beyond as we project to the NFL. And that's what our star rankings are based upon. Obviously, we talk a lot about the top 247, but we also have to project guys outside of the top 247, that 3-star status, guys projecting to Power 4 contributors, Group of 5, so on and so forth. So for us, the discovery process, we are fortunate with the technology that we have on hand today. When you think about the track and field metrics, the multi-sport context, verified data points from our friends at UC Report, and then relying on the expansive network that we have at 24/7 Sports. And you heard Tom Lloyd down in New Orleans at a 7-on-7 event, Mike Roach in Dallas with Gabe Brooks and Hudson Standish. We're really fortunate to have guys in boots on the ground to be able to give the feedback when it comes to the evaluation process. So there's a lot of different ways you can get a star. I would say the other thing for us that really helps in terms of sorting out the bucket of players is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. For us, having an offer is a big deal, especially when that registers in our database, sifting through how we prioritize guys at the top of the list. If you're 26, 27, right now that's unranked. We're going to start with the guys that have a Power 5 offer, work down to Group of 5, FCS, so on and so forth. So there's a long way to go about it. Like I said, I'm not sure if there's one direct answer, but fortunately for us, we got a lot of different ways to kind of arrive at that conclusion.
Coop, I mean, you hit on it. You hit all the good targets on there. But at the end of the day, we all understand that this is not a science. I mean, this is just you going by your protocols and your ideals of finding the best talent that fits your building. For our end, like you was just saying, from the scouting point of view, it's not easy. Height, weight, and speed. I always tell people, I said, slow people always slow when they get tired. Fast people and big people and strong people always strong and fast when they are tired. So you always want to go with what looks good, what's playing faster, and what's going to get your team the best chance of winning. And that's bigger, faster, stronger.
Smoke, Cooper alluded to it earlier, and he mentioned that offers come before stars sometimes with some of these prospects. So how do these college football programs find prospects?
Well, when you look at it, what you have to do is you have to put a 4 to 6 hour parameter around your state. We usually call it the footprint. And once you get that footprint, now you got to collect all the names in your area. So you got to use a research department and data collection 24/7. You go through there and look at the top 100 or top 200 players. And once you get that, then you start working out to get the variable numbers. You got to get the verified measurements from UC Report, Z-Crute, and you start building that block right there. And then once you get that, now you have to get the matrix of speed, tracking football, next gen. All of those give you, now you're adding and putting the puzzle together, would give you the names, what the players look like, and how fast they are. Then we would go to max prep. And we would look at max prep in terms of seeing what the production was on the field. So if the names, height, speed, and production all match together, then that starts your process from not even watching the film yet. Because we didn't have a chance. Now we got to get that wide net and cast them into getting about 400 to 500 to start off with to get to 50 to really recruit.
It's a copycat league, you know. When I think back to my time at Alabama, one of the first things that they taught us was, well, you got to have a recruiting conference. And what is that? Well, you kind of have to look at college football kind of as this food chain, right? You have the teams in state. Let's take Alabama, for example. You look at South Alabama. You look at UAB. A lot of these teams have to do a really good job when it comes to early identification. So they're going to be a little bit more liberal, a little bit more aggressive with their offers. Those were teams that we would track. You wouldn't think that being out of SEC powerhouse like Alabama that you would be looking at the Group of 5 level. But as those offers would come up, there were some players that would sift through the cracks and guys that we would identify that potentially at the end of the day, even if they weren't the Bama standard, there were guys that we wanted to take a closer look at during the evaluation process and get to camp, be able to see those guys live. And for us, that recruiting conference all the way to my time at Oregon and Washington was something that was an intricate part of our process to make sure that we had a balance in terms of what we were looking for and a fail-safe in terms of our process to make sure that we weren't missing anything. So that discovery part of the process that we talk about a lot, it's pretty ironic, but listen, at the end of the day, you don't get judged for being first. You get judged for the guys who sign the letter of intent and the guys that end up making plays for your program.
All right, so you both just described your discovery process for these prospects, but Coop, from the perspective of your role now at 24/7 Sports, what can a prospect do to make the jump from a 3-star to a 4-star?
Well, I talked about the top 247, right, as it pertains. 247 spots. There's 262 NFL draft picks. We talk about the NFL draft all the time. And we keep talking about height, weight, speed. People keep saying, well, all right, I got a Friday player who's got all this production. Why aren't you guys looking at him? Why can't he go from a 3 to a 5-star? Well, it comes from the point where we have to project these guys 3 to 4 to 5 years down the line. So everything's taken into consideration. We're at the point of the process where we are really evaluating the athlete more so than the player. And that's sometimes very difficult for a lot of people to grasp on the other side of the evaluation process. But it's all about how these guys project. So we talk about multi-sport athleticism. We talk about track and field metrics, whether it's in speed events or whether it's in field events. All those things are indicators to whether or not a player is ultimately going to be successful at the next level and beyond. The genetics come into play as well. There's so many different details and variables that you have to weigh. So the more supplementary data points that we have on a player, the more information, the more confident and convicted we are going to feel about ranking that player high. So when it comes to a 3-star, to a 4-star, these are all the things that are being evaluated. And often the biggest difference is that we have more information, more exposure to the players that we are willing to go forward with in that top 247 4-star kind of conversation. That doesn't take anything away. What I will say is you have to approach it from a point of view of humility and understand that you are going to miss. There are going to be some players certainly in that 3-star range, a lot of them that you're going to miss out on because maybe a trait developed in a different way that you did not expect. Maybe there was a certain level of coaching or development there that you did not take into consideration. So that is just part of the process. There's a lot of things that happen both on and off the field that equate to whether or not a player is going to be successful. All the things that we try to weigh when whether or not we're going to stick a number 3 or number 4 next to a player's name.
Yeah, Coop, you hit all the good points. Again, like the developmental upside is something that you have to look at with a non-biased eye. That's something that you got to say, okay, this guy is 6'4", 250 pounds, but looking at his shoulder, his wingspan, he can get up to 310 pounds. Now that guy might start out in a 3-star, but looking at what he is, you're saying at the end of the day, this guy's going to be a monster on the football field. And again, you have to look at it as a non-judgmental. You can't be partial to the situation because the problem that you get caught up into when you're a coach or somebody that knows the prospect, they're looking at the person. We're just looking at raw numbers because if we look at each person, that'll take us 5 years just to get 25 players. You got to look at the raw number, the raw data, and a lot of it comes down to analytics, feel, and understanding of what's playing and what's winning in college football. So you got to go by the process of it.
Projection and obviously looking ahead 3-4 years down the road is what we do here at 24/7 Sports with the NFL draft as a barometer for the rankings. But if you're a college football program, Smoke, what do you prioritize in the evaluation process?
Well, everybody knows Smoke is like the captain of the height and weight and speed police. If you're not hitting those matrix, it's going to be hard for me to honestly look at you because when you walk out on the football field, the particular programs that are winning look a certain way. And I have ideals at each position, and you have to hit those ideals. And when you do hit those ideals, now we get to the second phase of it, when then we get to the film. And once we get to the film, then we can come to an understanding of what we have. And places that I've been, we've had 3 tiers. We had the tier 1, which are offer take players. That means if they call today and say, hey, Smoke, I'm going to show up, I'm taking your offer. And I'm taking your commitment. The next one was an offer management. That was in the tier 2. Those are the guys that they hit most of the matrix, but we wanted to see more of them. So if they didn't hit that, we would only offer them when they got to those matrix. Either showed up on campus and we got verified numbers on you, showed up to a camp, ran, and we got those verified measurables on you as well. Then, and also we had the third category, was tier 3, which was players that just didn't fit us. Even though they were a 5-star for some program, culturally, and how they look did not fit what we wanted our team to look like.
Yeah, I think for us, I go back to working under Chris Peterson, and the biggest thing is obviously you want to identify good players. I think that's the easy part at the end of the day. You start to sort that out. Sure, there are going to be some conversations where guys are going to have difference of an opinion. You got to figure out what to do and how to proceed with that. But Smoke said it. You said the F word, right? It's all about fit. And what does that mean, right? Well, when you have the fit, that means everybody's rowing in the same direction. I think about all these players that we've had in the past at Washington, Puka Nacua, Leatu Latu, Trent McDuffie, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan. You go down the line. these are all really good football players. That's a given. But in terms of guys that fit the University of Washington, that program, what Chris Peterson was going to demand of them, I think back to what he always said is that talent sets the floor, character sets the ceiling. And I think that is so important in the evaluation process. And you see some teams, they don't get enough credit. Georgia, Ohio State, the Alabamas of the world under Nick Saban, they put a lot more into the ears, what's between the ears, and a lot more what's in the heart of the player than I think a lot of people think, and a lot of people give them credit. And sure, now in the era of the transfer portal, the ability to process players out, it's player transaction is at an all-time high. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, you hit with the players. I think the easy part is a talent ID evaluation, the objective part. The subjective part, if you get the guy right along with the player, then you got something special.
A lot goes into these grading systems. Smoke Dixon, thank you. Cooper, thanks for calling in from the Batcave. And for more from Coop, Smoke, and our entire team, be sure to check out the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. We have tape breakdowns of under-the-radar players, top prospects, the latest analysis from all our experts on the NIL, transfer portal, head coaching carousel, maybe the occasional hot take from Coach Reed and Smoke. Also, be sure to check out 247sports.com. Our team site experts across the country are bringing you the latest and most exclusive content on your favorite team. You can sign up now and get 50% off. That deal ends tomorrow, so go sign up right now. Okay, Blair, let's get to some viewer questions. Thank you, everyone, for sending these in. We will start with Tyler C., who asks, what are some upcoming events happening in the recruiting world?
The Under Armour tour continues, but the first one in the Elite 11 regionals is this weekend. It's highly anticipated out in Los Angeles. A number of high-profile quarterbacks, including Husan Longstreet, will be expected to compete. He is close to really going and making a decision. He's going to take some unofficial visits, but his offseason begins here at the Elite 11 regional, where he can kind of punch his ticket to the finals and really stamp himself as one of the top players in the state of California and in the country. You also have TJ Lateef, who's expected to be at the Elite 11 regional, Washington commit Dash Beerley, Madden Iamaleava, the brother of Nico Iamaleava, as well as 2026 fast riser Ryder Lions, all expected to be in Los Angeles this weekend for the kickoff of the Elite 11 regional tour.
Elite 11, always fun to follow. Question from Bradley T. Should Iowa State be considered the front runner for Xavion Robinson ahead of his commitment?
Yes, the Cyclones are still the heavy favorite in the crystal ball, and it sounds like a decision is coming later this week. It would be a massive pickup for them because these are the types of prospects that Iowa State needs to land at this point in the recruiting cycle to continue building out their recruiting classes and landing an in-state product like him who has some offers, who has some other options, and getting him on board. Matt Campbell and his staff doing a tremendous job of making an impression on him. So it would be a huge win for Iowa State this early in the cycle.
And our last question from James F. What type of recruiting impact do you see Eric Bieniemy having at UCLA?
I think he's going to have as big of an impact as he wants to have. It's different for him because he's doing it backwards. It seems like college football coaches are leaving the college game to go to the NFL. Eric Bieniemy is now leaving the NFL to come coach in college, and recruiting has changed a whole lot from the last time that Eric Bieniemy was coaching at the college ranks. There's NIL, there's a transfer portal, there's so many things to navigate. But there you see him hosting a prospect this past weekend, Will Griffin, a four-star quarterback in the 26th class from the state of Florida. And he had Will wear his Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl ring. So I think Eric Bieniemy has that for him if he wants to use it, right? It's all about the type of energy and the type of attitude and the effort that UCLA puts in. The Bruins just finished last in the Big Ten recruiting rankings for the 2024 class. Chip Kelly is gone. He's at Ohio State. New head coach Deshaun Foster, as well as offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, can do as much as they want to lead UCLA back up the rankings in the Big Ten for this 2025 class.
It's quite the flex, having recruits be able to wear your Super Bowl ring. All right, thanks, Blair, and thank you, everyone, for sending in your questions, for liking this video. and subscribing to the channel. One more thing you need to subscribe to is 247sports.com, and do it today because this promo ends tomorrow. 50% off annual VIP memberships. You can get exclusive content, intel from our team site experts that you can't find anywhere else. That's 247sports.com. All right, that's going to do it for us on this episode of the College Football Recruiting Show. For Blair Angulo, Smoke Dixon, Cooper Petagna, and our entire team, I'm Grace Remington. Thank you for watching, and have a great week.